Hello and welcome to the episode proper of the Rolo Tomassi episode of Backtracking. We will start with Rolo Tomassi's debut album, Hysterics. Released in 2008 through Hassel Records and produced by Jason Sanderson, it's a hell of a start for anyone familiar with their style. I mentioned a lot about their DIY approach in my very brief history video, and interestingly, the only promotion for this outside of touring was a video for the song I Love Turbulence, which came out a week before the album did. Considering that the album got an exclusive review from indie music magazine Thrash Hits, who gave it a perfect score, I'd say that the rocket was strapped to the band's back right from the start. The first song on this album, Oh Hello Ghost, indicates the album's sound, which features a very frequent usage of keyboards to create ambience and setting things up for later, which is a theme that carries on through the rest of the album. It's also a good tell of the band's sound, with their usage of mathcore passages, hardcore punk, and even mixing in some jazz on occasion too. Usually that would go down about as well as a fart in a lift, but it actually works really well here. The band took those genres that should not have worked and beat them up until they made it work, and the band are just brilliant themselves too. Lead vocalist Eva Corman is a force of nature, switching effortlessly between screaming and singing, and just taking so naturally to the front woman role here. It's hard to imagine that she and her brother James, who also kicks ass with his vocals, used to be more nervous about this kind of stuff. The album is put together with frantic switching pacing that thankfully doesn't make your head turn hard enough to hurt your neck, and the lyrics cover things like space, life and human nature in a very conceptualized way. And the instrumental work is great too, with smashing riffs and great work on the production front as well. My favourite song would have to be Abraxas. Abraxas? Abraxas? That one. Hysterics is a great debut that shows the band's personality effortlessly with great performances, writing and structuring. Good shit all around. Next is the band's second album, Cosmology. Released in 2010, it would again come out via Hassel Records and be produced by Thomas Wesley Pence, better known as Diplo. So after the band's debut, they never really stopped working, starting to record demos for the second album in late 2009 and flying to LA to record it all. This was all... He didn't co-write any of the songs, something he has a habit of doing with other artists he works with, and he helped a lot with Eva's vocal improvements as well by giving her some pointers, but mostly letting her do her own thing. Good on you, Diplo. Anyway, the album starts with the song Katzenklavier, which is German for cat organ, which is a weird instrument that doesn't exist, but you should look it up for yourselves, because it's just so fascinatingly strange. Katzenklavier is a good sign of the tone and progression for the album, mostly that it has a lot more mathcore elements this time around. The usage of more keyboards adds sort of a creeping vibe to it, which works honestly, and it feels heavier than their debut. It's a bit more stripped down, but still surprisingly complex and atmospheric at its core, and the band sell it all so well. It's well written, the band actually sought to improve on their debut, and it still has the signature Rolo Tomassi pacing with organic production too. My favourite song goes to the closing title track. Cosmology sees the band continue to improve onward, elevating their quartet in a unique way that's tied all up thanks to its gorgeous production. Next is the band's third album, Estrella. Released in 2012, it would be their first through their self-made label of Destination Moon, and it was produced by the band themselves, with Jason Sanderson returning to help too. So yeah, for those who picked up on the fact that it was released through a label that the band made, that flows nicely into their usual DIY attitude. But it did lead to a drawback, as they only had one tour in the UK in 2011, which didn't last very long because the band was so focused on making their own label at the time. Another thing going against it was that the band couldn't record at Sanderson's studio as he was having a dispute with his landlord at the time, so the band went to several parts of Nottingham to get it all finished. And you know what? Yeah, I'd say that worked. It starts off with the track Hell, and it does sort of start off like a typical Rolo Tomassi album, but that changes pretty quickly, and not just from a mathcore band perspective. It's a better produced and more accessible sound, but the band don't sacrifice their signature style in the least. Hell, the album didn't even chart or sell well, but the critics and fans loved it because, like with all their stuff so far, the band changed the game up. Maybe that part of that is the two new members, as this would be the first album with Chris Cavett and Nathan Fairweather on guitar and bass respectively, replacing Joe Nicholson and Joseph Thorpe, also respectively. And I have to admit, the newbies add a nice layer with their riffs and experimentation, with the rest of the instruments sounding top-notch as well. And Eva Corman, again always seeking to improve, does improve again, putting out another knockout vocal performance with better screams here too. I'd say they just sound a bit cleaner. My favourite song would have to go to Echopraxia. I have no clue if I'm saying that right. Having the band co-produce was the right call here, as was the creation of their own label, and it once again speaks volumes of how seriously they take what they do. And moving right along, we get to the band's fourth album, Grievances. Released in 2015, this would be the band's first studio album through the Rolo label, but I couldn't find a producer, so it's safe to assume that the band did it themselves, and yes, I'm including new drummer at the time, Tom Pitts, in that statement. So throughout most of 2013 to 2014, the band stayed silent, focused on writing this album. They only did a little tour in the UK alongside a band named Bronte, but besides that they were always working on new material, as seems to be their MO by this stage. The album starts with the track Strange, and it doesn't really sound like other Rolo Tomassi songs. In fact, this entire album doesn't sound like other Rolo Tomassi albums, they're still sounding like a Rolo Tomassi album. Are you with me there? I'll give you a second. Okay, you good? Good. I think this album might be the band's most melodic to date, and it's bizarre that I couldn't find a lot of information about it, as you'd presume that an album like this would get more people's attention. It's possibly the band's cleanest output, but it doesn't lack aggression in any case, and it's still made with passion. It's not what you would expect, but it's new stuff, and boy do they pull it off. Both vocalists sound more on point, the instrumental work is still manic but also remarkable with its restraint, and the production is handled so well, and I don't even know who produced this thing, but whoever did it gets all of the cookies. This album is easy to fall into and is done in the best way possible. My favourite song for this is Funereal. Despite being called Grievances, I have little to complain about when it comes to this album. Well written and well executed with a good core concept and another showcase of the band's ability to make just about anything that they do work. And at last we reach the band's fifth album, Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It. Released in 2018 again through Holy Roar Records, it would be produced by Lewis Johns, and at over 53 minutes it's the band's longest album too. Now, after the release of Grievances, the band toured that album off, then went on multiple UK tours in 2017, creating a website where their new work from this album was being teased. One of those songs, Rituals, hit the radio and a music video for it followed not long after. The creation process for this was unique also, as the band were coming up with insane ideas, but guitarist Chris Caford was struggling to keep up. Somewhat fittingly, Rituals was the song that helped him get back on track. But it's not the first song of this album, as the actual first song is Towards Dawn, which is an instrumental setup song, so we'll talk about the next song titled Aftermath instead. It shows the band taking on a post-rock approach with their usual mathcore meddlings, and it's also new thematically for them. They actually take a more positive outlook on things while still talking about the usual subjects of frustration, love and forgiveness. As this was my first Rolo Tomassi album before I started writing for this episode, I didn't have a lot to base this album around, but now I'm glad that I do. Honestly, this band has released 5 albums of accessible, easy to get into metal, and hopefully there'll be more to come. The production of this album takes it to grand heights too, and the performances and musicianship on display are equal parts frantically paced and beautifully restrained. I feel about that it was only my second favourite album of 2018, because it is genuinely innovative and brilliant and totally deserving of all the praise that it gets. My favourite song goes to A Flood of Light. The album lives up to the poetic implication from whence the title takes its name, and it's the band at the absolute top, tippity top of their form. And that about does it for this episode. I want to thank everyone who tuned into the PBW stream last night. I'll see you all this Friday for There Will Be Blood 2. Some great matches on that card, I'm glad I put them together. The next Backtracking episode, though, will be another 2-part episode where I'll be covering Waddinxveen, Netherlands' own Within Temptation. I have no clue if I'm saying Netherlands correctly. Until then, though, well, most likely until Friday, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye, I'm sorry my hair's a mess.